Right, this is another Handybook coming from the land of Handybooks. This is the 2007 Spider-Man one, Back in Black. I hit the sack too long, I'm glad to be back. And then the rest of the song after that. This Handybook is of questionable necessity, but it has the best cover of any of the Spider-Man Handybooks so far. Here is our credits, and underneath you have a long list of over 100 characters. Many of them major and essential Spider-Man characters who are not receiving profiles in this, and have instead received profiles elsewhere. This one also came after the 2006 maxi series, a 12-issue A to Z. In that, we had profiles for many of the characters that so far had not managed to get in on the two previous Spider-Man-centric one-shots. Characters like Tom Stone, Cat the Bounty Hunter, Nazi B-Man, leaving us with some real trash. Sheer heart attack. When that is your first one, it doesn't inspire much in the way of hope for desirable profiles. Also, note, we are starting at the letter C. That's quite bad, isn't it? This really is the level of Spider-Man character we are dealing with in here. This is Papa Dom from the vague age of Spider-Man. I know nothing about him. I have never read his comics. I own them, or I probably own them. This Handybook is almost themed around the vague age of Spider-Man. I will explain. The vague age of Spider-Man is what I call the period after the Clone Saga, but before the Jason Byrne reboot. After the Clone Saga, the books tried to return to normal and act like nothing had happened. And you have some decent creative teams on the 4 Spider-Man titles, but nobody really knows those stories. The Clone Saga had lost most the readership already, and then the Jason Byrne reboot would be when people maybe gave it a shot again, but then gave up when they realised how bad that was as well. We have a profile for the Daily Planet. This is much improved from the one we saw in the Spider-Man 2004 Handybook. There is a good excuse for doing or redoing some profiles, and that is because the original did not meet the standards that these Handybooks were now carrying. We get to see everyone, or close to everyone, who has been or is employed by the Daily Planet. Profiles like this, team profiles I guess it would be, definitely were overhauled in the A to Z, and for the better. I would still say they could be improved, but this is overwhelmingly better than that paltry profile the Daily Planet had before. More vague age of Spider-Man over here. We have a uniform look for the profiles now. None of that weird shenanigans where a character would have a giant picture, a page devoted to a picture, and even the art choices. Still, a lot of failings in that department, but there is some improvement there. For example, this one is 95% of a good picture choice. Bloody hate the enforcers, me. And the enforcers, they are followed by what I am going to say is the best spread of characters. And that is sad when you acknowledge who they are. We have Jim Hunter, Hunterman's first of many progeny out for revenge. I wish they had stuck with Jim Hunter. It becomes very silly when every other writer is bringing out a new unseen kid when they already had one. Then we have, you won't recognise him, but we have Smokey Bear. With a redesign like that, he is really arguing in favour of those people who wish he had never appeared again after Spider-Man's Web 58. He only wore this design in one miniseries. He got back to the fursuit afterwards. Then, this is another vague age baddie. All I know about him is he also was in Ghost Driver at some point, because they had the same writer, Howie Mandel. Hunterman. He had been one of the big obvious ones we hadn't covered in one of these yet. He was in the Book of the Dead in 2004, instead of any of the Spider-Man ones. We have really hard art of him, and we do still have bad crop jobs where characters are losing fingers or entire limbs. 3 pages for Hunterman. This was another thing the 2006 series gave us. Characters were getting far more detailed and fleshed out histories. The attached pictures remain either placed incorrectly or providing little to the writing, but in terms of raw data, we have as much as perfected these profiles by now. Hobgoblin, the second one, the original Pumpkin King. I dread the day I talk about the Hobgoblin identity, but on the other hand, I quite want to talk about all the things they did, all the things they tried to make the second Hobgoblin his own character and a different type of threat to Spider-Man. And how Roy Sternum killing him off to reassert his original idea of who Hobgoblin was, it was spiteful and stupid. I mean, look at him. With this design, you can fucking distance him enough. Call him Cyber Gobbler or whatever. It's wasting a character for no reason, except that he bothers you. Also need to do an actual anti-Royce Sternum video. The attitude he developed under Tom Beevort, inspired by Kurt Busey clearly, is horrid. And he very recently did a retcon to C3PO that manages to equal anything Kurt Busey has done. Completely without merit. Completely selfish and deluded. And yeah, he did some great comics. Some of the best. And he is a nice guy. But his treatment of stories, maybe he was always this way, but it was definitely validated and amplified by the environment of Tom Beevort getting him to fix Hobgoblin and Kurt Busey drafting him to help co-plot and co-write all his shite. This is, however, one of the more prominent Spider-Man characters to get a profile in this. Now here is an interesting one. Smegma. Nobody knows Smegma, but he has two very unusual feats. Two things that are baffling that a character like him holds them. Smegma was the villain that forced Robert Downton Abbey Jr. to admit he couldn't wear the armour anymore. Smegma was who Rhodey Rhodes became Iron Man to battle. Important character in Iron Man history, you would think. The other thing is there was a Spider-Man crossover, a smaller scale one, an Nabisco box crossover called Missing in Action, and the plot was that Spider-Man disappears for a month. The reason for his disappearance was Smegma. Smegma buried him under a mountain. Despite Smegma having these two legitimate, semi-important pieces of Marvel history, he hasn't appeared since Kazar issue 3. Can't remember what I call this character, probably something to do with cum. The power grids, they are also massively improved. The power grids make sense now. I'll talk about them more in another video. I just mentioned Kurt Busey. There is our glorious Untold Tales of Spider-Man. I think everyone agrees Peter Parker's parents being spies is daft. But it comes from the Silver Age, so Kurt Busey doesn't retcon that. No, he rolls around in that shit. Robbie Robertson's Robertson. Now this one got my attention. It is some more vague Age of Spider-Man stuff. There's a character, a bad guy, called Overdrive. He is from the vague Age of Spider-Man. But apparently, the Jason Bourne reboot changed him into being this fire skeleton. I say reboot, that is what it basically was. Chapter 1 was obviously meant to be a reboot, and the main books were using that as their origin, rather than the original comics. This too is another vague Age of Spider-Man bad guy. I have his issue. I remember it. Spider-Man is being crushed in his hand on the cover. Saliva Man. This art comes from New Warriors, Volume 2, Issue 4. He had a hand. In the issue it comes from, he had a hand. They just chopped it off for this. I don't know why. It's not even a great picture to use of him. I am going to take a guess that Robert the subscriber loves Slide. He probably has cosplayed as Slide at some point in his life. Smythe from the cartoon. They really like to try and bury that design for him that people know from the cartoon in profiles about him and the Spider Slayers. I suppose he did only look like that for an issue and a half, but it's a weird thing to not reflect more. The constant fear I face when I look at these Handybooks on here is getting to a profile like this where I have nothing to say, and I can't even think of an amusing name to give him. A Star Wars story? I don't know. He became Bullseye Man for a bit. Remember that? He was Bullseye Man when Bullseye Man was pretending to be Hawkeye, and Hawkeye was pretending to be a murdering ninja. Spider-Man update. He is back in black, that is the main thing. But we also get schematics for his armour, which he doesn't wear anymore. That is useful, isn't it? Notably, These are by the same person who did the schematics for the hard Handybooks, so that is nice to see. And they have to explain his organic weapon again, because Spider-Man got organic weapon for a second time. This really happened. In 2004, writer Richard Jenkins had Spider-Man die and be reborn from a spider egg, and this was a long-winded way to give him organic weapon like in the movies. Marvel forgot they did that, I think, so in 2005, writer JMS Michael JMS Straczynski had Spider-Man die and be reborn from a spider egg, and this was a long-winded way to give him organic weapon like in the movies. I'm not joking, they did the same story twice with the exact same end result. They just forgot that they had already done it. And the second time they did it, well, the first time it was a standard length story arc for the time. 4 issues, maybe 5. The second time, it was fucking 12 parts. Emma Stone clones. Emma Clone. I was going to say that she's still out there, I think. The main Emma Clone. But I am confident Dan Slott will have killed her off in some Spider-Verse rubbish. Hate these Goombas. Notice, by the way, how little presence all of Brie Larson's granddad's characters actually have in Spider-Man mythology. Well, these were actually Todd McFarlane, but I associate them more with Brie Larson's granddad. He drew the story where they murdered Venom. That lasted, didn't it? On the topic of Venom, he is symbiotes. A not very good profile. We didn't know much about the symbiotes back then. It's mostly detailing all the symbiotes we have seen. From the pages of Defenders, it's Wally Walrus. Jim Tomatis' last issue on Defenders that Peter Gilbert inserted a little bit of homophobia into. We really are scraping the bottom of the barrel for Spider-Man characters in this one. There can be some good characters hidden away, but this isn't one. By Christopher Clairvoyant logic, meet Darth Knight's half-sister. And Wingless Man, the Fantastic Force baddie, he is probably related to, even though he spells it differently. Fuck. He is a Spider-Man villain. This wasn't Gary Conman. Will-O-the-Wisp wasn't Gary Conman. It was Lenny Wen, but he has all the hallmarks of a Gary Conman villain. He has no place as a Spider-Man villain. There is no reason for Spider-Man to be his nemesis. You could as much as add him in Daredevil and nothing would change. Actually, he would make more fucking sense in Daredevil. His blind and light power would be the perfect thing to draw on against Daredevil's own blindness. It is a very clear way for Daredevil to defeat Will-O-the-Wisp. He makes way more sense as a Daredevil enemy, and they have not even met, I don't think. Another thing that the 2006 series debuted was off-page profiles. These are for the much more minor characters. Yeah, they come more minor than Slide and Jimmy Six. Of these, of all the off-page profiles, the one I want to focus on is, surprisingly, created by Kurt Busey, Edmund. He was a bad guy in Untold Tales of Spider-Man, a prototype for Green Gobbler, and if I am going to buy any Kurt Busey comics ever, it is going to be the 2 issues of Untold Tales of Spider-Man with Edmund. They're not secretly good Kurt Busey comics. It's simply that this character goes on to much greater life over a decade later in Thunderbowls. Here is 4 profiles, each of them requiring some form of discussion, and I won't discuss any of them. And here is 4 that are the opposite, absolutely nothing to say here. Oh, and here, as you can see from the second profile on this page, we had started splitting characters, even if certain people who held the name didn't warrant a full profile. They could get an off profile like the third Byrd man here. They don't stay around for long, but we also sometimes get profiles about the people who did it, and I respect these people, and so I'll give this profile some screen time right now. Here is the contents, with the exception of the profile. This is everything we've just seen. Confusingly though, the off profiles, which are put at the back to not offset the main profiles, they are listed alphabetically, so you sometimes can be confused because it's not quite the order you've just seen. I don't know who this Handybook is entirely for. It's very niche. I cannot say Joe Schmo walking into the comic shop and loving Spider-Man and getting this because Spider-Man is on the cover and so are all the symbiotes, and then enjoying learning about Wally Walrus. Usually I ask who your favourite character or team profiled in this was, but this time around it feels like more of a challenge. So rather, I will ask, do you want to see the 2008 Spider-Man Handybook, which I do not have? I don't have it because it is filled with Dan Slott era rubbish and nothing else. New bad guys like Screwball and the Freak. Spider-Man's new love interest based on Marvel's editor-in-chief's daughter. Spider-Man's new roommate. And then an off-page profile for the new Captain Marbles, the real one, a Skrull. Don't know why he's in it. He gets half a page. That is how important he was. He was already dead by that point. While I prefer the art on the cover, I wouldn't say it is a good cover because it is a bit misleading, with it prioritising the symbiotes, Birdman, an apparent Green Gobbler, Emma Stone, Mysterium. All these things are in it, but not quite what you're expecting. There's no Venom entry, Birdman is an imposter, etc. I'll still hand this a 7 thumbs up.